There are some arguments you remember for years. You remember exactly what they said. Exactly what you said. The moment you knew, I am right. Sometimes you even remember the sentence that ended it. But here is the strange thing, you can win the argument and still lose the person. A brother stops calling. A friend grows distant. A husband and wife keep living in the same house but stop talking about anything that really matters. Two members of a community keep praying side by side, but a wall stands between them. Nobody admits it. Nobody talks about it. But something has died. Today's gospel gives us one of the most practical teachings Jesus ever offered about what to do when a relationship breaks. Jesus says, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault, between you and him alone. Notice the first word, go. Not, sit there building your case. Not, rehearse the conversation for 3 months. Not, gather 10 people who will agree with you. Go. And notice where he tells you to go, to him, not against him. That small preposition holds the whole spirit of Christian correction. You are not trying to destroy the person. You are going because you don't want to lose him. Then Jesus names the goal, if he listens to you, you have won your brother. Not, you have won the argument. Not, you have proved you were right. You have won your brother. That is a striking redefinition of victory. We usually measure it this way, I was right. You admitted it. You apologized. I got the last word. Jesus says no, the real victory is simply this, I did not lose my brother. When you know exactly where it hurts. This truth cuts deepest inside families. Brothers and sisters know exactly where to wound each other, because they know each other's history, the old scars, the sore spots, the one sentence guaranteed to land hardest. And when anger takes over, that knowledge becomes a weapon. The gospel says otherwise, don't use what you know about someone to destroy them, use it to love them better. That is a very different way of seeing the person across from you. But what if I'm actually right? Because sometimes we are. Sometimes we really have been wronged, someone really has acted unjustly. Christianity doesn't ask us to call evil good, or to mistake silence for peace, or to stay quiet simply because conflict frightens us. Jesus himself says, go and tell him his fault. Truth still matters. But here is the hard part, you can be right in your facts and wrong in your spirit. You can speak the truth with a heart full of contempt. You can correct someone while quietly enjoying their humiliation. You can defend justice while stripping the dignity from the person standing in front of you. That is what makes Christian correction so demanding, it asks for both truth and love at once. Truth without love curdles into cruelty. Love without truth softens into sentimentality. Jesus refuses to let us choose only one. The Mahabharata wrestles with a version of this same tension. The Pandavas believe theirs is a just cause, and Krishna guides them through a devastating war, yet the epic never lets us conclude, they won, so everything they did was justified. The victory doesn't erase the suffering. The war doesn't settle the moral questions. The cost remains, unresolved, long after the fighting ends. Which raises a question every religious person eventually has to face, if I believe God is on my side, does that make everything I do right? That is a dangerous shortcut. History is full of terrible things done by people convinced God had signed off on their methods. Christianity must never collapse into, God is with me, so how I act doesn't matter. Jesus offers a different question entirely, not only, am I fighting for the right cause, but, am I becoming like Christ while I fight for it? That is the real test. If I defend truth by becoming hateful, something has gone wrong. If I defend justice by humiliating someone, something has gone wrong. If I defend my faith by trampling another person's dignity, something has gone wrong, because for Jesus, the means matter. The person in front of me is not an obstacle to my argument. He is my brother. She is my sister. And that is why the goal is never, win the opponent. It's, win your brother. Even when he has hurt you. Even when you are certain you are right. The relationship still matters. Private before public. Jesus then adds a practical safeguard: if the person won't listen, bring one or two others; if that fails, bring it to the community. Notice the order: private before public. How different this is from how we usually behave. Someone hurts us, and before we speak to them, we speak about them, to one friend, then another, then someone else. By the time we finally face the person, everyone already knows the story. Everyone, perhaps, except them. That is the heart of Christianity. Jesus didn't win us by defeating us, he won us by giving himself for us. For a moment the cross looked like total defeat. It became instead the place where hatred met love, where sin met mercy, where humanity's violence met God's forgiveness. The world said, "Defeat him." Jesus answered, "Forgive them." So when he tells us today, "Go and win your brother," he is not asking anything of us that he hasn't already done himself. He has already shown us the way. Who is waiting for you to take the first step? Maybe there's someone you need to talk to. Not to win. Not to get the last word. Not to hear them finally admit you were right, but because you don't want to lose them. Maybe the first step is a phone call. A conversation. Just, "Can we talk?" One conversation may not fix everything. But reconciliation often starts with one small decision: I will stop fighting you, and start talking to you. That is where grace begins. So today, don't only ask, "Who is right?" Ask, "Who is my brother?" Don't only ask, "How do I win this argument?" Ask, "Who is waiting for me to take the first step?" Because one day, none of us will remember who won the argument. But we may well remember the person we lost because we were too proud to let go. If there is someone in your life today from whom you are divided, remember the words of Jesus: you have won your brother. Not the argument. Not the debate. Not the battle. Your brother. And perhaps that is the Christian definition of victory: not that I proved myself right, but that love was strong enough to bring us back together. The cross shows us what that love looks like. It does not deny truth. It does not call evil good. It refuses to become hatred. And it is always willing to take the first step. So the question to carry home is a simple one: who is the person I need to stop fighting against, and start walking toward? Because wherever truth is spoken without hatred, wherever forgiveness proves stronger than pride, wherever two wounded people take one step toward each other, Christ is already standing in the middle. Jesus says simply, "Go to him." This doesn't mean every situation belongs behind closed doors. Serious abuse, danger, or injustice may need appropriate authorities and real protection. But the ordinary principle still holds: don't turn a private wound into public entertainment. Before sending the angry message, it's worth asking, will these words heal, or will they wound? We can apologize for words once they're out. We can never make them unheard. There am I among them. Then comes one of the most beautiful lines in the whole passage: where two or three are gathered in my name, there am I among them. We usually hear that verse in the context of prayer. But look at where it actually falls, right after Jesus has been talking about conflict, correction, and reconciliation. Perhaps what he means is this: when two wounded people try to come back together in my name, they are not alone. I am there. Christ is not present only when everything is calm. He is present when reconciliation is hard. He is present when two people are finally speaking honestly. He is present the moment someone says, "I was hurt," and present again the moment someone finds the humility to say, "I'm sorry." Jesus doesn't just teach reconciliation, he becomes it. If anyone in history had the right to say, "I am right and you are wrong," it was Jesus. Innocent. Betrayed. Falsely accused. Mocked. Condemned. And yet on the cross, he did not use his innocence as a weapon. He prayed, "Father, forgive them.